because salons are just like a bunch of cool people hanging out at the bar after the conference sessions have ended and before the next morning starts, and this is where all the fun conversations start. So we'll go around and introduce ourselves. Brian, you're going to be last. The format of a salon is people are just going to drop in, hear what they hear, and maybe think, no, that's not for me. I'm out of here because they have no agency. It's not really related to them, whatever. Some of us are going to join in and think, oh, this is going to affect my work. What do I need to know? What do I need to get? So this is a very much an extractive process. Brian, we're going to objectify him and just pull from him everything we want and need. But there's some reciprocity because some of us will sit here and think, oh man, this needs to happen. What do you need, Brian? Who do you need to know? Where do you need a entry point? If if we've got a connection to a really cool organization like Idealist, let's connect Brian and Ami and have a conversation going and make that happen, kind of thing. Which Brian will happen right after this salon. Okay, so but to do that, since we've got just a small group of people, can we go around and say hello? We'll start with Tim and then Harry and then Sarah, and then we'll go to the folks who aren't on video yet. And so Tim knows how this goes. Where you're calling in from, who you're with, why the hell you showed up.
Hi, I'm Tim Parsons. I am calling in from Cleveland, Ohio. I'm with Idealist and also working with Chris at the Makerspace. And I actually had the really good fortune to meet Brian in DC at the announcement for this and the 250th. And I was really excited about hearing about all of that and really excited to get to see you again, Brian, and hear how things are going.
Likewise, Tim. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Harry.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm calling in from Miami. My name is Harry. I'm with Brian, actually. I just started working with the National Museum and Center for Service. It's been about 2 months. I'm the administrative coordinator. I'm really happy to be here. Can't wait to hear you guys and Brian speak again. Every time I have an opportunity to hear him speak, I'm front row, so very excited to be here.
Awesome. Okay, Sarah, up to you. And Sarah's one of our founding 50 folks in the Makerspace making this possible. So really appreciate that, Sarah. And then we'll go to Leanne and Casey. She's just looking for a mute.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah, and I'm based in Orange County, California. And I'm super excited to be here with all of you today. And I got to meet Brian through a committee that we both sit on through Independent Sector. And I'm actually a new board member for the National Museum and Center. I joined in April. So I'm taking in all of these learning opportunities as they come.
Oh,
We're
Brian,
so
you got
thrilled to have Sarah on the team.
Yeah, you got a
And
warm
Harry as well.
Leanne and then Casey, yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Leanne Nalen, and I am calling in from Boise, Idaho. I am currently in transit, so that is why I'm not on camera. I didn't want you guys to get a little car sick here, but I am with Talos Coaching and Consulting, and I am hoping to spearhead some work here in Idaho with my local Rotary Club as well as our district. Casey is actually with my Rotary Club as well. I'll let her introduce herself, but we're just really jazzed about this. I heard Brian talk about this at Global Ties US conference in DC. I got chills. It is just a Venn diagram of my life. I've worked for the YMCA. I do civilian diplomacy and Rotary. So could not get any more excited to be here. Service is very important to our community, and how we want to celebrate it is what I'm really excited to just explore and do with our community members. So thanks for having us, guys. Really grateful to be here.
That's awesome.
Great to see you again, Leanne. Thank you so much.
All right, Casey. If you can, that's cool.
She may be on mute.
Yeah.
Yeah,
all right.
I'll just speak for she's in my Rotary Club and is a dentist, so I think she might just be multitasking to learn a little bit more about what Leanne, the excitable girl, is bringing to every meeting. So she might be in and out, guys. Thanks for coming, Casey.
Awesome. Okay, so the way this is going to work, we're recording this. We're going to edit it down a little bit so it's nice and tight for the folks who registered but can't make it. All the salons are free. We're going to have one or two a week in the makerspace. Really interesting ideas, but these are typically new or innovative or systemic ideas. You're not going to get a lot of how-tos or entry-level type things, so they tend to be bigger concepts and things that are going on. Of course, all of this is for the purpose of solidarity and holding the line on a more pro-social future that offers a place for everybody to belong as they are and who they are, versus a regimented authoritarian decision about who qualifies as human. So, without any other reference to that, but also, you know what is weird? I just went to a conference and these three huge elephants are all walking around, and we're all talking about the effect of the elephants without ever noticing that they're right there in the room with us. It's so weird, this era and this age. And Brian, I'm wondering if at some point we can actually talk about the appetite for the National Museum and Center for Service to exemplify counter administrative action throughout history. A lot of the most heroic service and action at the time was denigrated or seen as hostile or other. And this many years later, we say, no, they were on the right side of history. But in the moment, the heroes are hardly on the right side of history. So I'd be interested to see how a museum that celebrates the people on the wrong side of history in the moment is on the right side. Does that make sense, Brian?
Well, totally does. You know what? I've got since we're all friends here, we know each other. I'm gonna just do a couple of illustrative slides to illustrate the point as I try to make it in public forums, and then we'll talk about what we've done, because there's some hugely exciting work. And Leanne, I'll preface this with just yesterday. First of all, I am so excited to be working with everybody on this call. And we're making huge progress. And just yesterday, I spoke to our local Rotary here, and they are gung ho on this. They're super excited. And I'll talk more about what we did. But let me just share with you a slide that I think it illustrates the point we're making. Hang on just one sec. Always an adventure, right? When you're sharing screen.
Yeah, well, I didn't know until you mentioned 5 minutes before the call that the Zoom link wasn't even in place. So
Yeah.
yeah, it happens to the best of us.
All right.
Do you see the share button at the bottom?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I'm just making sure I've got it called up. Yep. All right. We're good. I want you to have a quick look at this slide here.
All right, and as he's getting set up, I know everybody, this is sort of an inside group that's going to be played for people who don't know anything about it, so we'll make sure that we provide that rationale and context so people who haven't been at a previous presentation by you, Brian, can understand. But also, in the chat, if you don't mind putting in any questions or extra material, PDFs, if you read a news article that goes with what's going on and can add context, just let's blow up the chat box, if you don't mind. That would be really helpful. Okay, Brian, over to you, and I'll be quiet.
No worries. So the slide you just saw was examples of people. It's apropos of the elephant in the room, Chris. People serving all around the world, doing amazing things, and that service is being eradicated. And one of the questions that we ask people is there a physical place anywhere in your community where all those who serve are publicly honored? Go ahead and shout it out. If you've got a place in your community, shout out where that place is. Crickets, right? We don't have such a place. And that's part of the problem. We aren't honoring this service. And so because of that, it's easy to destroy programs that people don't know anything about. It's easy to not worry about people in other countries if you don't know them. And one of the things, I want to make here really quickly is we do honor military service, and that's thoroughly appropriate. There are literally tens of thousands of war memorials, monuments, etc. in the country. And in high schools, we honor athletics. Every high school has its trophy case. But less than 1% of the people in this high school can ever make that trophy case, because you've got to have a personal interest in athletics. You've got to have a body type. You've got to have time. If you're working to help feed your family, you don't have time for, to go to summer camps and sports and stuff. And not only that, even if you're an athlete and you've got time, your group has to win the championship in order to make the trophy case, which is kind of ridiculous because 100% of the kids can serve, but only a tiny percent can be in the trophy case. So when we do honor, this is iconoclastic, but it's an angel's advocate view of how we do honor service. I was just with this Rotary yesterday, as I mentioned. Here's the typical model. We invite people to nominate someone for an annual service award. And maybe let's say we get 30 nominations. Small groups of people say, let's nominate Harry or Sarah or Tim. Let's nominate or anybody else. Let's nominate them. Whoops, I've got an auto vans going up. That's all right. I'm going to pause that. Hang on. This was set to run in a different time frame, so I'm going to pause there. Here's the key point. You got 30 or 40 people nominated, and then you get a blue ribbon panel together, and they choose your annual service award winner who's recognized at the annual banquet. The Angels Advocate says this, hey, wait a second. I'm going to stop share on that. The Angel Advocate says, look, you started with 40 really good stories, and then you went to a lot of trouble to turn 39 of them into losers so you could pick your one winner. And then you honored that one winner during a dinner one night a year. The dinner lasted 2 hours. It was in an enclosed space with people who pretty much knew the story already. What if instead you take 40 stories that you've already got the content for, create posters of all 40, and put those posters up all around your community? What more power is that there if you do it that way? So that's the premise. And a couple of key points, and then we're going to maybe just have some discussion, and I'll share some really neat examples here in a second. When we first started this, the idea was let's create a signature national building in DC. And we've got several in mind. The idea was not to build a new building. That's a $500 million enterprise. But let's take an existing building and repurpose it or adapt it so that people in DC have a place to go to learn about how great our country is when it's really at its best. Then we realized, though, that look, not everybody makes it to DC, especially from my old congressional district, very large rural area, tiny towns, maybe 10% makes it to DC. So then the question was, how can local communities, and Leanne and Casey, this is really relevant to your work in Boise, how can local communities create their own local service exhibits? And let me cut forward to just a little bit, yet another slide, and share that, because this is the answer. Can you see it okay? Okay. So the premise is really pretty simple. Every community's got people who serve. It's great that we've got people from Rotary, YMCA, and a whole lot of other groups. Every community's got people who serve. Every community has physical spaces where you could put up those. Remember, I said, let's create 40 posters, physical spaces where you could create those posters and put them up. And now we have the technology ourselves, literally in our pockets with our iPhones, to record people, to take their photos, to look up their backgrounds, and then actually, even with a phone, if you wanted to order a poster online. The posters, the exhibits are going to be, they're going to be, what we think is important is that exhibits be inspiring, inclusive, affordable, transportable, and that in every exhibit, it connects people to how they can get involved. If you're at a Rotary Club meeting or a Kiwanis Club meeting or a Lions, or even if you're just aware of your community, there are so many good people doing so many good things. But then you ask, like the cricket question I asked earlier, where are we telling those stories? We're not. And yet there's so many places to do it. So how's it work on campuses? And the campus model is pretty similar to how the community can do it. You start in a campus, and a campus will include high schools or colleges. And by the way, we have toolkits to make this happen. And I'm going to show you the toolkits in about 5 minutes so we can work through some of those and you can see how easy this is. So if you're doing it on a campus, it's great because you can use the students as a pedagogical, as a learning exercise to gather the stories. You have students interview peers who are serving, faculty, teachers, staff, alums, graduates. Say, what are you doing? And what difference does it make? And why do you do it? Then the students use their digital skills and their storytelling skills to create exhibits. And again, I'll show you some in just a second. They distribute those around the campus. And now it's not just the tiny number of athletes in the trophy case. It's the kid in the wheelchair. It's the kid whose body type doesn't lend to it. It's the kid whose new generation doesn't necessarily even speak English. Those kids are now getting recognized. Their parents feel positive about it. Other kids think, oh, hey, that's cool. I want to be involved. And then you do this perpetually. And if you're a college, here's the other elephant in the room, Chris. We know colleges and universities that have lost $200 million of grant funding. Critical research studies stop. Community service projects stop. Educational initiatives stop. Careers ruined. But you know what? Those colleges, to be perfectly honest, have not been very good at telling their story in the past. They do their work, they stay quiet, but if you walk around any college in America, you will not see posters of service being done by the people at that college, and you sure won't see them in the community. Even if they're saving your own family's lives, you're not going to see anything about it in your community, and hence, when it gets cut, you don't even know what you've lost. Here's an example. I promised some examples. These are posters. The one on the left is a place called Americus, Georgia, which is it's where Habitat for Humanity got its start. A marvelous teacher named Joanna Arnold there was at the National Youth Leadership Council when I presented, and she said, I want my students to do this. This is one of the students pictured there, a young lady who Rosalind Carter grew up near there in Plains, which is not far from Americus. So the kids first said, well, let's tell Rosalind Carter's story. So the young people looked up her background and made a story of Rosalind. But then they had a problem after they'd done that. It happened there were some incidents of youth-on-youth violence in the area. The kids got really concerned. And they said, the kids said this, what if we use this poster of service model to talk about people who could help stop this? And they had the idea, let's interview our sheriff and our chief of police and tell their stories. And you can't quite see this, but right behind the young lady is the chief of police. And there's a poll quote from him, which is so powerful. It says, law enforcement is a commitment to serve others, to put the needs of your community above yourself, and sometimes even above your own family. And the sheriff has a similar poll quote. These posters have been up in the public library, in the school library, at town hall meetings, at a big conference that the kids helped put together to promote service in Americus, Georgia. On the right side of the screen, in the red backdrop, that's a poster made by a junior, a sophomore, and a freshman at Sidwell Friends Elementary, with really very little help from faculty or anybody else. They interviewed alums. They have one staff member, Tani Ray, who I know really well, who's been instrumental in this, but they mostly did it on their own. They interviewed alums. They asked them, what do you do? Why does it matter? What's your career path? And then they created stories, and they've got 14 of these. So the students get to talk to mentors, role models, examples of ways they can serve. And again, to the elephant in the room, Chris, you don't ever have to use the word diversity in this. I have no problem with the word, but there's an elephant stomping on it right now. And what you can do is just demonstrate diversity through the stories you tell, because service is about diversity. So here's an example of where young people created stories. The middle example is South Georgia University, which has both a digital and a physical museum of service. And now let's look at, I'm going to jump. Remember, we said we've got campuses and we've got community places. And I'll
Brian?
pause. Go ahead, Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you were just about to pause. Anyways, can we just, since some of the folks on the call have heard things before,
Yeah.
Can we check in with you on a little bit of what this might, what we're thinking, or any questions we have?
Exactly. I was just going to ask that, Chris. So you're ahead of me. I was going to jump to the community, but let's pause at the campus. So any questions, insights, suggestions at this point on we'll get to the camp or the community model in just a second. But any questions or comments?
Let me kick it off.
Yeah, please.
And then, Sarah, I hope you're going to say something. Adrienne, thank you for coming.
And
others.
Tracy.
Okay, here we go. So it is great to have students collect these stories, but that feels like a lot of work. How did you find the students? How did you organize it? How did you send them out? How did you get the information back and validate it? How did you then process it? Like, there just seems like a ton of work to make even one exhibit happen.
That's a great question. It may sound like that. It's actually super easy
Okay.
in a couple ways. First, let's set aside the alums for just a second. In the service learning model, in schools that follow service learning models, that pedagogy,
Yeah.
a step in that process is called demonstrate. So the students go out, they do their service, and then they say, okay, I've got to tell what I did, because it's believed, and I think it's right, that helps reinforce the lessons of the service. So how do they demonstrate? Typically, the students come back to the class, they've got some pictures of where they served, and they've been asked to write a report. Classics is a student who says, I served at the homeless shelter, or etc. So there's your content, Chris, for the students who are currently working now. What happens though is normally they present to their class and that's it. If they take that content and turn it into a poster and put it up in the school or in the community, now the community is seeing, oh, look, these kids from this high school or this college or whoever the students are, whether they're kids or not, are making a big difference. So that content's already there. It's just a
Okay.
matter of printing it out.
So you're saying, look, the content is being generated as part of service learning work that almost every college university has in some of the courses. Let's just harness that and bring that forward. That sounds like a great idea. And I'm going to stop talking after this and see if anybody else has a question. I'm going to stop right now because the setup totally obvious. I lost the actual question here. Okay, somebody else, come off mute, ask a question. Let's dig into this because really the goal here is not to leave with, oh, that's a great idea. I'm glad Brian's doing it, but to be a bit more like Sarah and join the board, or Harry and become part of it, or Tim and help broker a formal partnership with Idealist and Volunteer Match, that kind of thing. But in order to do that, we just sort of need to understand it more. So folks, this is your dig in because you're also doing it for folks who are listening later. Like, let's ask some questions that could work with them. So we are going to get to some questions specific to how companies can get involved later. But for right now, anybody?
I'll just say, so I love this concept of reaching into schools and motivating the students to stand up, centers of service to highlight those who are volunteering. And I'm curious, Brian, because I don't even know, and I should as a board member, but how about high schools? How's it been to outreach to high schools? And I wonder even if there's an opportunity to go further upstream, and maybe this is a few years out, to middle schools and catch youth as they're just becoming teenagers and they have a little more independence and they're kind of getting into service. Like, I feel like there could be a huge opportunity to really promote this culture of service that we already have in the United States, but really build on that and make it more of a thing among young people.
There is, and it's a great question, Sarah. We have created 3 toolkits, free and open source. I can jump to that, I think. Well, I'm going to give you the campus one for college. Hang on just one sec. So we've got 3 toolkits that anybody can use, okay? There's one for K through 12, Sarah, and it was created by a brilliant, brilliant teacher named Deborah March, who teaches at the John Lewis High School. John Lewis High School is something like 85% first or second gen English speakers, kids from all around the world, sometimes literally just arrived. Deborah March has a bilingual toolkit that you can download free on our website and adapt to your own needs to get age appropriate instruction in how to choose your service project, how to plan your service project, how to keep data from your service project, how to report your service project out, how to create a poster. So it's exactly what you see, Sarah. And what happens is, and back to Chris, your initial question, the content's there again. So there's an example. The kids are already doing the service project. They have to report on it. What the difference is, instead of just reporting to your class, Sarah, which is the standard way, you report and the teacher hears it and your peers hear it, and that's it. You just take that content and put it up around the school. The same as, I'll give you two other examples where this is the case. One at the college level. So we've got the toolkit for high school. Just 2 weeks ago, the University of Washington did this marvelous, about a 4-hour long, they called it celebration. And it was a celebration of all the community service the young people had been doing, mostly young, right? They weren't all kids, but most that the students had been doing. They had a speed dating thing where you could go around and sit in front of a table and the student had a PowerPoint of their project. They had posters around the room, so you could go talk to the person standing by the poster. And they had presentations, sort of like 10-minute presentations. So 3 different formats. In total, well over 150 students in some way presenting their project, sometimes in small teams, etc. It went for 4 hours. I was a kid in a candy store. I mean, everything was great. The things they were doing were amazing. But you know what? Most of the people in attendance were people in attendance. By that, I mean, either you were already presenting yourself, and then you would rotate when you'd done your presentation. And it was a ton of work to set up, and they had these great presentations. And who else saw it? Right? This is not a criticism. I compliment. They did fantastically. All that we have to do is take that digital content that they've already got and put it up on the monitors all around campus. There's monitors in every building, the screens that say this is what's happening. And/or print them up in posters and put them around the University of Washington. So back to your point, Chris, it's really not hard. The content's there. The other example is the Rotary Club I mentioned yesterday. And now we've gone from K-12 to the campus to the community. So I did this pitch. I happened to know that they had just given their annual service award about a month ago for our local little town. And when I said the example of you start with 40 nominations and you make 39 losers, you could see this light bulb going, oh my gosh. But then, to their great credit, the woman who had been in charge of that, instead of getting defensive, said, Brian, you are absolutely right. And here's what strikes me. We have the stories already. Because to nominate somebody, you have to tell that person's story. She said, we have the stories already, and we've got a Rotary-sponsored event that the whole community comes to. For literally a few $100, we can turn all of those 40 stories into posters and put them up around our event. And then we showcase all the 40 ways Rotary does this. So low cost, low demand, content either already available or soon to be available. And we've got the toolkit you can use to build it. Does that address some of what you're asking about, Sarah?
All right, perfect. Okay, everybody's going to have to respond to something here a little bit. So get ready. We're going to go around. Since we were just talking about Rotary, let's go to Leanne and Casey. And
If it's okay, I see that Tim had his hand up, so I'd really like to hear from him since he had something queued up.
All right. Thanks, Leanne.
And then I'll go. I do have something to share, so I'm not
right.
opting out.
This is great. And it's actually, you made me think of it with the Rotary piece. It sort of started the thinking in my head. So I recently had a chance to meet like an entire community of people that I didn't realize how much service they did in the world, which was the fraternal benefit societies, right? Like Thrivent Financial for Lutherans, like all these folks.
Interesting.
Who, are sort of, as they say, like fraternals are to life insurance, like credit unions are to banks. They actually have sort of a financial sort of engine, but the big thing is that they really work hard to provide fraternal benefits inside their communities, right? They were waves of immigrants that showed up and they had need of mutual aid in times of hardship, but they weren't welcome to take from the common pool at the time. And the fact that really blew me away, Brian, and it made me think about this is how, and the question I'm going to get to is like, what's the on-ramp or the connection for how do I draw lines between folks like this and your group, or how do I help them see it? Because they collectively have 7 million people inside their group who last year donated 50 million hours and $240 million. And I had
Wow.
never personally heard of them until I had a chance to go talk to them. And and your sort of service, the club, the lodges, all that sort of whole community land feels like a group of people who, one, have stories, two, have interest, and three, would be really excited to find ways to talk more about what they do. And all those things feel like they line up with what you're trying to accomplish, Brian. And I think so there's all of that set up for a two-part question. One, what should somebody who wants to help connect you to the right people, not everybody, because you're still like a smaller team, so you can't just take all of the meetings, right? What's the evaluation metric for who should I introduce you to? And then two, if that feels right or that evaluation metric is met, what's the pathway to introducing you to people who might already be very well aligned in terms of like having service people already loving talking about it and being motivated to talk about it more, and just like love this idea of, oh, let's find a Brian and then we all win together?
That's a great question. So thank you, Tim, for the question and the example, because I wasn't fully aware of that as well. A couple of quick points. You can reach us at hello@nmcfs.org. Harry will handle that incoming. hello@nmcfs.org. And go ahead and nominate and let us know, and we'll try to follow up with folks. In
Great.
our experience, there are so many groups that face exactly the question you asked him: how do we get our message out? And the typical thing is, how do we recruit volunteers? How do we get our message out? And how do we raise money? And what almost every organization says is, well, we're going to go up on social media, the noisiest environment in the history of humankind, expensive to maintain, only reaches people who go there already. What we're saying is take the museum to the people. And one of the things you said about fraternal societies reminded me, at the community level, for example, the town I live in, I know Boise's got diversity. Every community's got diversity, most do. But there are whole sectors of our community that we know nothing about. I go to the big Asian market here in Edmonds. The foods they have, the variety, I'm totally clueless about that. But they've got their own service organization. So imagine a Korean service organization in a town like mine, or a Latino service. They create posters of their people doing service as well, and it's in their language and English. So now members of our Asian community are walking through Edmonds, Washington, and they're going, oh, look at that. My people are getting recognized. And not only that, people who aren't Asian are going, holy smokes, I had no idea that they were doing all this great work. So it's such a powerful unifier. So let us know those groups. Part of our model, Tim, and to everybody else, is this. If we try to do this, just Sarah, Harry, Brian, and some others of our team one-on-one, we can't get there. But if we work with big organizations like Leanne and Casey's Rotary and their marvelous group Global Ties and Realize Worth and Idealist, and we disseminate that through the channels, the culture picks it up. Somewhere somebody had to create the first athletic trophy case, and now everybody's got one. So the idea is they can disseminate that through their channels, and that hopefully each community will create a mechanism by which you gather together your service organizations, connect them with the places where you can tell the stories of service, and then give instruction with our toolkits about how to create exhibits. And
So
go ahead, Chris.
we want to get into those toolkits, and I notice we just have 20 minutes, so I'm going to try and cram a few things in here. I want to make
Yeah.
sure you get those for us, Brian. But Leanne, could you say your words? Now that you're safely in a parking lot, I assume.
I am
Yeah.
safely in a parking lot and actually outside one of our lovely public libraries, go libraries.
Wow. Perfect.
So just a couple of comments in salon style, but also some things I think that are words of wisdom that I'm just going to maybe say in different words that I've heard already today. This really is community organizing. And so when you think about going about and a culture shift and how we navigate this in our local communities, especially here in Idaho, people say Boise. Well, we're doing the Treasure Valley because there's about 5 communities in here. And if we say Boise, then we are excluding those other individuals that are in our community and a part of our community. And so it's really that expert knowledge that you have on your community, your game changers, your organizers. And I think when you get down to it, it's building those relationships. So it is like, well, I'm very excited to work with Brian. I don't want Brian to have to talk to every person in the Treasure Valley or every person in Idaho. And so, we're talking with sign shops to talk about, can we get some kind of a nice exhibit that some of our large nonprofits might want to put up that's branded, that looks easy, but it's a light lift for them. At the same time, we're looking at those smaller organizations that don't have the influence but need the voice. And so when we're talking about how we're going to fund this, how we're going to sponsor it, it's not a Rotary thing, it's not a Leanne thing, it's a community thing that they're going to define and they're going to grow. So part of that too is we've tried to really think about how we can talk about stories, how we can give people the tools, because most service people are not comfortable being in the limelight. That
Yeah.
is why the sector is kind of quiet. It's a humble sector. So how do we empower those that we want to share their stories? One, just have a conversation and let us celebrate you and make sure it's comfortable and accessible. But again, those are just a couple of the things I've heard that I just wanted to frame up a little bit differently. But it really is, it's going to be very local, but it's going to be impactful if it's common. So looking at some of those gaps that you have in your community and also those opportunities. So when we're thinking about sponsorships and over the next year, we're thinking time, talent, and treasure. Because
Yep.
in true service form, when you think about I think it's a new statistic, 36.17 an hour or something is what a
Mhm.
nonprofit,
Yep.
what a service volunteer hour is. So when you think about a small nonprofit who's collecting these stories, or a service club, give them that monetary value in the sponsorship level and recognition, because it's very powerful to have the dollars, but it's powerful to have the people. And so I think those are a couple of things that I don't know if there's anything else we can build on, or other pieces. And I don't really want to get into the how to. I hear we're not talking about that, but really that building relationships in the local communities. We're not going to relate to DC, but we're going to relate to the Boise River Network. So anyway, just a few thoughts.
Leanne, if that in the musical Hamilton, Hamilton says a speech, and they say, "Let's get this guy in front of a crowd." When I heard you say that, I thought, Chris, I hope we have recorded what Leanne
Yeah.
just said, because that's the model, Leanne. It's not somebody from DC or a federal agency doing a grant, or the Smithsonian telling you something that's going to cost you $10 million. It's Leanne and Casey in their local community, who know it way better than Brian Baird, building their own tools with their own people. You said it so perfectly, and it's right. That's why it works. Thank you. I'm so excited to. We're going to talk. I guess we've got a meeting scheduled. So, but that's the kind of model, Leanne, and Chris, I'm so glad the way you framed the question. It sounds like a lot of work. Leanne and Casey and her team have said, no, we can actually do this. We've got the resources, and that's going to be so powerful for the, what's the proper word? I don't want to say for Boise now.
Oh, we're just doing the Treasure Valley. So
The Treasure
Treasure Valley.
Valley, right? Got it.
But we're also, because of that, I'll just say the relationships, in the Rotary Club, we've then worked with a woman, because we are the capital. So she actually works with AmeriCorps and Serve Idaho. So then that gives an opportunity where what we were thinking was a community thing has now been amplified to Northern Idaho and our panhandle in one relationship. And so even those young people, when you have pre-K and kindergarten telling their stories, their parents hear that. That impacts their parents' workplace. That impacts your community. So I wouldn't say let's just worry about the generations of middle school and or later down the road. Like, bring them in now. Let's have those conversations now, because it is a family affair. So
Leanne, you raised something else that's super important, because I just want to highlight that. And then it's that it is not just the outcome of the public of the posters. The process by which you create it brings people together. Various service organizations that may not have talked to each other a lot now pitch in. So when we did our exhibit at the MLK Library in DC, we brought the YMCA together with the Rotary, and suddenly people were working together, and your whole sector comes together and sees the value of it. So it's beautiful the way you said it. So it has these ripple effects. Sorry, Chris.
No problem, no problem. We got just some rapid fire questions, and we're going to leave you at least good 8 minutes to go through the two toolkits. So here we go.
Yep.
You ready? All right. And anybody else who has a question or a comment or a disagreement, a different way of seeing it, throw it in the chat if you can. Number one, is this the kind of thing that you could involve sister cities in? You know how every city has a sister city somewhere in the world. Is it possible to export pro-social acts over there and have them share their stories with us? Is there an angle there that could be pursued? I'm just thinking about the American-centric isolationism, and this is an easy way to push against.
Chris, it's brilliant. And you're talking to two people, with Leanne and Casey, who were both at the Global Ties conference, and that's where we met. What an inspiring conference. This, I'm going to be honest, frankly, for marketing purposes locally, to try to get support, we sometimes refer to it as the American spirit of service.
Yeah.
But there's a Norwegian spirit of service, there's
Yeah.
a Japanese spirit of service, there's a Pakistani. So it's classic with Global Ties. Leanne and I were chatting at the Global Ties conference. This is the kind of thing, if you've got international visitors coming to the US, and you can tell them, look at what kind of how service plays a role in our community, that then goes viral. Our whole hope ultimately is that this is a worldwide phenomenon. So we call ourselves the National Museum of Service. But frankly, service happens everywhere in the world. There are good people doing good things. So, and Leanne and Casey would be way more knowledgeable about that than I would.
All right. Second question. How will the center deal with bringing together groups that normally don't play in the same sandbox? We've noted Idealist, Points of Light, Volunteer Match, Chronicle, all of these organizations, especially in nonprofit side, just a human bias to have a deficit mindset sometimes. How are you finding it navigating the politicalness of all of that?
Well, that's complicated because each group has their own model.
Yeah.
Our premise is, first of all, we don't want to recreate the wheel. I mean, if somebody's already got something neat going on, do it. We'll help. I mean, if you take a Points of Light model, they've been giving out Points of Light recognition for years, and that's marvelous. But wouldn't it be great if they had a place to do it?
So
Wouldn't
you're
it
an
be great?
amplifier. All that current work, you're not replacing or providing alternatives. You're just saying, look, I want to amplify your work. I'm not going to meddle in it. It's just, it has a place to go and live on in a legacy.
What we're doing, we're to somewhat impresarios in a way, in the following sense. You've got all these service groups with stories to tell and no place to tell them and no tools to tell them. Or they tell them in tools that don't work very well, to be honest. We're saying, look, we're giving you an idea that you can then do in your own community. Now, we ideally want to network it. So we would love at Treasure Valley if we do some co-partnership. So it's a product of Treasure Valley, Global Ties, Rotary, and us, not because we need our ego stroked, but because we want to create a national network where if you're in DC, you can learn about Treasure Valley. If you're in Treasure Valley, you can learn about DC, etc. So
Okay.
we're trying to bring that together.
And there's a place for companies like IBM or Apple or Microsoft to also, in communities where they live and work, to participate in this with a private sector branding even?
There's multiple ways. One, they could support this initiative. They could co-sponsor it. We're doing a lot for the 250th anniversary. We're going to get some toolkits disseminated through WETA. They're going to partner with us to do that. So partnering with us, supporting our organization, partnering with your local community. In Treasure Valley, for example, or any other city, there's usually anchor employers. They can help fund the local storytelling. The other thing that is so often missed, I was just in DC last week. I went into these massive buildings with glass and chrome atriums, and the receptionist and the thing echoed. That building is undoubtedly filled with people who do service, and there was not a single story up of any of those people.
You know who does that? DHL in Germany, in Bonn, their headquarters. You go in and they've got acts of service all over, just
Is
almost
that
like
right?
what's in these photos. Yeah. So I think there would be an appetite for that, Brian, especially if one company could be seen by their peers across the nation.
Well, Tim's point as well. Again, our model is don't make people go to the museum, take the museum to the people.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And that means take it to Treasure Valley and let Treasure Valley put it together. And Treasure Valley, if I were to go into Treasure Valley and say, oh, here's a place for a museum, Tracy and Leanne or Casey and Leanne would go, yeah, but that's not where people actually go. Here's where they go, right? The grocery store, the whatever.
Yep. Okay. So Leanne had a good question. I don't know if you have your chat open and can read it, or do you,
Let
and
me
even
see.
if you want to address it, because it may take all your time from your toolkits. So Leanne, you
No,
may have
that
ruined the whole salon here with that really great question.
I feel really seen now, Chris. Thank you. That's basically how I roll. So thank you for that.
Seen her spotlight.
Well, Leanne's amazing. Casey as well. It was it's so inspiring to hear him. So let's, if I, like, I don't, well, Leanne, it would actually be perfect. We have no problem. If they want to put like Idaho Museum and Center for Service, fantastic.
Oh,
But, yeah, and one of the things about the 250th that you've alluded to, the reason we call it 250 and beyond is because we want this to be not just some flash in the pan 1 year thing. But I would frankly recommend against making that your logo focus, Leanne.
mm,
It can be a magnet, but a magnet can sometimes trap something, right? So make the bigger thing museum and center for service, of which we're going to make the celebration part of it, but this is not part of the 250th. The 250th is part of that. Does that address it, Leanne?
good.
Great.
All
Then,
right.
then by the way, you avoid some of the national splatter, which is going to happen as that thing gets taken over by whatever. So
And
it's
Brian, there is still that one question of how to celebrate volunteering that's critical, but is cast as very negative or against the current rulers. So we're not going to have time to discuss that, but I do want to come back and talk about this sometime. Instead, can you show us those toolkits?
Yeah. I see Adrian's got a question. Adrian, are you where you can speak to this and we can hear your thoughts?
Yeah, just Brian, and just again, I have a million ideas. And Brian, we've met before. I worked at AmeriCorps
Yeah.
for a little bit, know Bill Basil well. But I just want to just double down on this thought of making sure that we are displaying empathy as a strength. And I think that this is a really important moment for that as we're getting pulled apart in so many different ways. And the spaces we've gathered normally for this volunteer type activity are feeling stress from other places. So I think there is a moment, a critical moment here of lifting up these stories as strength and not as our weakness as a country. Because
Beautifully said.
so just doubling down on that. I don't have a practical thought on that, but really just appreciate the work and appreciate everybody's creativity here.
Mm.
Well, that's the agenda, isn't it, Adrian? If we tell the stories of good people doing good things, that is a real counter to selfish people doing selfish things.
Yeah.
And we've got to change that in the culture. I've said before, and some of you've heard it, democracies die when selfish people use the process of democracy to gain power and then use power to undermine the democracy. But if we focus on selflessness, on community spirit, then good things happen. And we've got to elevate that and then involve people in it. So real quick on the toolkits, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but let me just share so you can see what they look like. Can you see this? This is one for campuses, and we've got one for communities, and we've got one for K-12. And this has been created with our partners at Campus Compact. I want to give them a lot of credit. They led the effort. We connected with them, and then that we worked closely together. They brought together a working group, and these toolkits are well produced, really good information. How do you start? Where do you get funding? Basically, if somebody wants to do it in their community, pick one or all three of the toolkits, and you can proceed through it. There's a comparable one for high schools, as we mentioned. There's a comparable one for community library exhibits. So lots of examples of how to do that. And now I've got to remember how to stop the share. So the tools are out there, and we're happy to share them.
That is awesome. Okay, it's a freebie. Let's go. 5 minutes. Super fast. Well, that's a bit of a letdown.
Well, the key point here, what's so exciting about it is we've got real examples here. And you know, in the Treasure Valley, Leanne and Tracy, did I say Tracy? I keep saying it wrong, right? Casey. You're not on my screen, Casey. I said Tracy twice. My apologies, Casey. That's the example. Joanne Arnold in Georgia is the example. The kids at Sidwell Friends. And this will become the national movement. And what I haven't said, just to get everybody aware, we've got our eyes on a significant building in DC, and we're working with them so that can become a reality as well. It's not there yet. A lot of challenges, as you can imagine, complicated working environment, but some really exciting things.
It's not the Institute for Peace, is it, Brian?
We actually had our eyes on it. They're going to repopulate it.
I hear anybody can break in and strong arm can own that property.
Yeah, no, yeah. You have to be malevolent in order to get that. You can't be malevolent. But we've got other places. But Adrian's got a comment here. Yeah, you know, the great thing about this is how many different ways there are to serve. And you know, that's part of what's so powerful about this. You know, it's interesting. We asked that Rotary yesterday. We said, name somebody who you want to recognize for their service. And the most prominent people came out, right? It was Rick Steves, who's a dear friend, lives in my hometown, and is a real great philanthropist. So everybody says, we all want to honor Rick Steves. Rick would probably be the first to say, yes, I appreciate it, but there's a lot of other good people who deserve recognition. So it's the coach, it's the janitor, it's go ahead. So yeah, it's that.
All right, we're at 4 minutes here, so this is great. Keep throwing it in the chat for those of you who are listening and you're missing some of the chat here. It will be included in the notes. Brian, would it be possible to get everybody in the House of Representatives to contribute by doing an interview about their most meaningful act of service in the past year, and get them to start showing up in this conversation?
It's a really interesting idea. I will share this. Two things. One, I've met with members of Congress from both sides of the aisle, and there's a hunger just in the Congress. Yes, there's a bomb throwers who like to divide, but there's also a lot of good people who want to find common ground, and oftentimes it's service. You sit down with them, and it turns out, oh, this person is opposite of the political spectrum, but they were a Lion, they were a Rotarian, they are a Little League coach, they're a Scoutmaster, their church does volunteer work in Latin America. That's really powerful. But the other thing is, some of these programs that are getting wiped out, imagine how hard it would be to just wipe them out if every community had AmeriCorps posters up.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You have your face on something in one of the libraries in the United States, and all of a sudden you're saying, you know, let's defund AmeriCorps.
Exactly.
It's a
we
weird
cognitive been doing this 10 years ago.
Yeah, to have to live with. Yeah.
Yep.
That's pro-social resistance.
Yeah, there's about 4 or 5 members who've actually served in AmeriCorps, and we've reached out to them. But you know that.
Well, I know one thing that compels them are private sector high ups who do the same thing. So maybe it's a both end. We can work this problem from the both side and get Tim to put his name up there. And what's his head from Microsoft? They all, well, not all, but all the ones that I can think of would be able to actually give a real example.
Well, and you know, Chris, many of the corporations are not perfect, but a lot of corporations do a ton of service.
Oh,
an enormous amount.
That's my whole angle. Yeah, I want them to be seen, and to start to being seen doing good also means you've got to give it a little bit more oomph. Like, it's not a throwaway, nobody's going to see it anyways. It's like whatever. Like, if it's going to be seen and discussed, then I think the seriousness with which it's handled inside a company would be different too.
Well, and surveys suggest that the public, less than 5% of the public, or less than 10% of the public, trust corporate philanthropy. They don't even know what the corporations do.
Where did that data? I want that data point.
I'll get you. That's from the Lilly Endowment. 10%. And only 5%, listen to this, only 5% of the people surveyed indicated that they or a family member had received benefits from a nonprofit organization in the last year. 5%, we all receive benefits from nonprofits every single day of our lives, but only 5% of the people thought they had benefited.
Recognize it, yeah. That's it.
So we've got that problem. But yeah, that's Lily Endowment. I'll send it to you.
I would
That's why
appreciate
we
that.
need to do this, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, this was a great presentation. Thank you so much for Brian for letting us dig in and figure out what we can do, how we can contribute, and how it will make our lives better. I'm going to send out the notes. This is salons. This is not the end. We don't just go on with our lives. We're going to loop back. We're going to keep talking about it. If you showed up, I'm sorry, you might be sucked into some of that conversation. If you want to opt out, just say, leave me alone in one of the emails and we will. But other than that, we're trying to hold the line here together.
And we are a volunteer, largely volunteer. We're a nonprofit, obviously. We need the assistance. And the best way is what Leanne and Casey are doing. Adrian, I'd love to chat with you more. We need people with talents and skills and motivation. And Leanne and Casey, we're going to talk shortly. Chris, as always, you're a genius and so kind to mentor and keep me on track. I really, really appreciate it. And Tim, great to see you as well. So we'll press on.
I'll see everybody a little later, I'm sure, in one way or the other. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Take care, everybody.